Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another episode of Higurashi Kageboushi. Last time, Natsumi was blowing the fuck out of Chisato, non-sexually. Um, and it was a pretty good scene, man. Especially with it wasn't just like spite driven. There was like a lot of truth in Natsumi's words. I wonder where we're gonna jump back to. If we're going back to the police, we ended off with Akasaka getting a call that to return to base and the mission's called off, so we'll see. Still waiting for the dentists distributing the pills theory to come true. Hopefully. Oh, here we go. Okay, literally right when this left off. Speaking from inside Chief Yamokai's office, I shouted into the receiver in a rough voice. It was unreasonable. The director's orders may be absolute, but this wasn't one I could just accept and move on. Wasn't this supposed to be a secret investigation in the first place? Upper management shouldn't even be aware of it. That's true, I didn't even think of that. So if they taught, if they're aware of it, someone leaked it and then they're just shutting it down. Yeah, Tomoe died for this. Akasaka-kun. On the other end of the phone, I could hear Kano-san let out a sigh. Based on the tone of that breath, I could tell that the decision was no longer up for debate. But even so, I couldn't stop there. Ooh. Tell them someone died for this shit. Oh, oh shit. The Security Bureau of the National Police Agency was the headquarters of public security across the entire country. The Metropolitan Police Department I worked for under their umbrella, and the Public Security Police carried out activities all around the nation under their orders. Yet, how were they able to learn about our research activities? It's just... the conspiracy's just too fucking big. What? The social impact. I mean, I guess, now that I think about it, it's kind of fine, but they're already being hounded by the press. I don't think this is worse than that. Oishi-san and Chief Yamaokai were waiting in a separate room, likely out of the consideration that this was a public safety affair. But based on that precondition, it was clear that Kano-san was about to give me confidential information that he'd investigated in secret. My entire body tensed as I recognized the weight of that implication. Nonetheless, I answered, "Please tell me." Cabinet Research Division? That was an agency that collected and analyzed information related to important policies of cabinet ministers, including the Prime Minister. So why on earth would they obstruct a public safety investigation? Moreover, the subject we're investigating is a terrible incident, but it revolves around a rural village and a simple commuter town. It's not a major economic region for the country, and it's not the sort of place that normally receives government scrutiny. So why on earth? It's even more incomprehensible than the Security Bureau ordering us to end the investigation. I mean, we know, but I feel for you, Atasaka. Probably not. They cock blocked them. It's Tomoe's message about Shiro Cabinet. Oh my god. It's not Shiro, it's Ciro. Or Ciro. They assassinated Tomoe. I knew it. It was an acronym that frequently came up during work. But I couldn't make the connection because they didn't seem to have any relevance to this investigation. However, I punched the chief's desk with enough force to break my fist. You mean break the desk? Because we know you have fists of steel. They were the ones who stopped my investigation. They were the ones who blockaded information about the incidents related to Hinamizawa natives as a wide area incident. And they even robbed Chief Inspector Manai of her life. It was them. It was all them. What national secret was hiding beneath this great Hinamizawa disaster? It killed 2,000 villagers, and even the people who escaped from the disaster have been caught up in bizarre incidents that robbed them of their lives. What the hell were they scheming that would make them even go as far as killing a detective trying to unearth that secret? And even though I managed to grasp that shadow by the tail, grasp the shadow of the tail. Even though I've managed to grasp the shadow of the tail, I'm being forced to retreat without gaining anything. Then what was the point of coming here at all? He exploded? How can they get away with this injustice? With something so cruel? Saturday, July 9th, 1983. The rain was pouring like a waterfall last night. Even after the rain let up, it was still a bit chilly for a day in July, and my throat was starting to feel irritated. Come to think of it, my body felt a little heavy when I got up from the hotel bed. Of course, that might just be because I've been feeling depressed lately. I sat down on the chase lounges in the break room and fiddled with a warm can of black tea in both my hands, muttering to myself in self-loathing. Suddenly, I saw the figure of Chief Inspector Manai sitting in the chair before me, smiling my way, and it quickly dissipated. Come to think of it, that was where she sat when she ate through that mountain of hamburgers. With those eating habits, she had a life of medical troubles to look forward to in the near future. I'd been planning to warn her about it when I got the chance. But she was already gone, so there's no sense worrying about it now. I responded to the figure that was no longer there, and I lamented how powerless and irrational I had become, as I tightly squeezed the can in my hands. After that, I let Oishi-san and the others know that I received orders to suspend my investigation. Oishi-san was discouraged at first, but like a true veteran, he quickly moved on and actually tried to cheer me up. After saying that, Oishi-san smacked his chest with his large fist. Thinking about the deep sorrow engraved in that thought, I couldn't say anything. Ooh. And they mean literally. Literally chop chop. Those two were feeling the most sorrow and anger over this. Far more than I. Yet they were encouraging me, so it took all I had to just say, please do. However, I didn't tell them the meaning behind Chief Inspector Manai's last words. There's no way I could bring myself to say it. I mean, you probably should say it. How could I tell the people who passionately believed in the justice system that their beloved country was willing to take someone's life for political reasons? Probably should tell them. It's kind of important to the investigation, no? Every time I fulfilled my duties as a public security official, I felt a little more of the sadness and helplessness in the world. First off, who do the police even work for? The public? The country? Or a few powerful people? Even though I realized absolute justice was a naive illusion, I devoted myself to working in the name of justice and allowing people to live in peace. I thought nothing would shake that. And no matter what obstacle were in the way, even I was forced to take a detour. Even if I was forced to take a detour, I did my best to carry it through to the end because I believed that doing the right thing was its own reward. And yet, what does it mean to be a detective in the wake of this unbelievably hopeless situation? I took my empty can and tossed it into the trash. But the trajectory was slightly off, and it bounced off the edge of the bin and fell to the ground, making an unpleasant sound as it rolled down. Bars? And when I saw a pair of feet next to the point where it stopped, I raised my head. Madoka? Nope. Unbeknownst to me, Oishi-san was standing at the entrance. As he said that, Oishi-san picked up the can and tossed it in the trash. Yo. I mean, he works at Okinomiya, so he definitely has connections there. I was trying to say Shia, but she's dead. Feels bad, man. It seems the search warrant was issued through the neighboring prefectural police by Chief Yamotai's mediation. Then, Oishi-san spread out the Natsumi Kimiyoshi reports and documentation. I thought back to my first meeting with her. At first glance, she seemed like a kind-hearted girl who enjoyed reading books. She seemed a little shy and had some difficulty talking with others, but that was pretty common for girls her age, so it didn't seem noteworthy. However, what that? I noticed the photo of her face attached to her and I was surprised when I saw it. The Natsumi Kimiyoshi I saw there had long hair with bangs that covered her eyes, making her look like a ghost. What the heck? Also common enemy in Rancid. It gives you wealth. Rude. This went beyond being passive. She was a downright problematic student. Her isolation within the class probably put her at odds with the other students, and they bullied her for it. Oof. Okay, maybe the mother's worse than we thought. I thought she was just stressing because of all the shit happening, but if she was doing that, Well, an Okonomiya, that's a little sussy.
ただそこは全く変わりませんでした。おそらく母親が親の悪口を言うなとでもきつく注意したんでしょう。その証拠に今度は先生とも話さずにますます引きこもるようになったみたいで。なんてことを。
It was a clear example of an overly extreme family discipline gone wrong. Natsumi Kimiyoshi wasn't trying to blame her parents. She was asked a direct question and answered obediently, and if her parents considered their role in this, the problem could have easily been solved right away. However, if her mother didn't interpret it as a call for help from a child, but instead an attempt at publicly humiliating her, what would happen after she scolded her? So Natsumi has some deeper trauma than we were expecting, or that we knew of. She was still mentally immature, so after being reprimanded by her mother, she probably rationalizes it as, if I talked to the teacher again, Mom will get angry. And then she had avoided talking to anyone. She was worried that her mother might get angry if she spoke to anyone for any reason. Then she drove herself deeper into that isolation.
Mm, それがですね。中学の担任もよくわからないと言っていました。で、その性格が急に明るくなった時期はいつぐらいかと聞きましたら、3年前に入院した後からがそうだったと。入院
When she started getting eerie medicine.
彼女は何の病気で入院したんですか？貧血症の治療と言っていましたね。どうやら君吉夏美は普段から理由もなく突然気を失うことが多かったらしく、それで2ヶ月近くも入院していたとのことです。幸い時期が夏休みとかぶっていましたから、学業にはさほど影響がなかったそうですがね。
Anemia. It happened due to an iron deficiency in the blood. Or it happens due to an iron deficiency in the blood that prevents the flow of oxygen. And the symptoms include dizziness and fainting during exercise or regular activity. It's not an incurable disease, but examination and treatment can take a long time because of the risk of complications with other diseases.
Ma, 担任としては娘の入院を機に母親が反省して厳しすぎる教育方針を改めたのかと思で、地元の高校に無事入学。その担任の話では一時期彼女を都会の進学校に通わせる話もあったそうなんですが、入院都会の進学校に通わせる
times 2.
母親の意向だったんですか？
Yeah, we know the mother wants her to get in a good university.
かなり上昇志向の強い教育ママさんだったようで、君吉夏美の体調を第一に考えていた祖母の君吉明とはよく意見がぶつかっていたと町内でも噂になっていたそうです。実際柿内市への転居は祖母がお社様のたたりを恐れてという理由の他に、君吉夏美の体調を理由に大反対したと高校の時の担任は言っていました。
Fair play. Life in the city had completely different rhythm and flow compared to a rural town. Natsumi had only just overcome her sense of isolation and gained the ability to interact with others normally, so if she was forced to live in an unfamiliar place, would she regress to her old personality? Clearly, her grandmother Aki was worried about that. However, Haruko saw her daughter's improvement as a sign she should push her daughter into a good environment. Certainly, if you just want to get a job in a rural area and raise a family, your academic background won't make much of a difference. However, if you're aiming to work for a major company in the city, you'll need to attend an appropriate college. With that in mind, a prep school in the city would be better, able to provide classwork that prepares students for college entrance exams.
実際私もそれと無縁ではなかったが
Materials, as I read earlier, mentioned that Haruko Kimiyoshi had attended a rural university with a poor reputation, and her husband Toshi Kimiyoshi went to the same university. They probably experienced difficulties finding a job at their education level, and they were trying to push their daughter into higher education to keep her from suffering the same fate. I didn't think that was wrong, but the implication was quite different if Natsumi Kimiyoshi understood that, or if she was just obeying her mother out of fear. Could that dissatisfaction turn into hatred or a grudge, gradually making her more and more depressed until something triggered her to explode? Those emotions could be the driving force behind murderous intent. Or more passive emotions like rejection.
どうしました赤坂さん。
大石さん
What? I don't know what you just thought of.
あくまで家庭の話なんですが
Alright, let's hear it. I thought back to the report Chief Inspector Manai received from Matsuoka of the Gifu Prefectural Police about Natsumi Kimiyoshi's medicine, and explained my reasoning to Oishi-san.
君吉夏美が普段から服用していたのが抗興奮系抗精神伝達系の薬だって話でしたよねだとしたらその薬を服用するようになってからいや服用するようになったからこそ彼女は性格が一変したということではないでしょうか
No, because it's a syndrome, but this is what triggered the Hinamizawa syndrome to accelerate, basically. So he's kind of right.
それはどういう
つまりです彼女の症状は貧血症ではなく失神だったのではという話です
They're often confused, but the root... Oh, or is he, saying it was an accident? They're often confused, but the root cause might have been a mental problem instead of anemia. There's a mental phenomenon that can cause the mind to flip the breaker and shut off consciousness. For example, when a person feels their violent urges, instinct can fill a person's mind with destructive desires and murderous intent, but the rational part of the brain can recognize that action as improper and try to suppress it. And as people grow older, the rational part of the brain is strong enough to overpower this instinct, so most adults are able to avoid taking impulsive actions. However, what if the subject was going through adolescence and the rational part of the brain wasn't mature enough to handle it? Children who haven't developed mechanisms to deal with sudden urges of instinct wouldn't be able to control the explosions of emotions, and in some cases, those thoughts can turn into actions. Typical examples include destructive behavior, murder, suicide. One cause of adolescents hurting others in surges of emotions without any clear reason or basis is that they lack the ability to suppress instinct. Still, there are some children who mature early and are able to think rationally, especially in women who seem to mentally mature faster than men. So, what choices do those boys and girls make to suppress instinct? That's right, an intentional severance of consciousness invoked to avoid emergencies otherwise known as fainting. This reads like it's real. They're saying in young child if they're mentally developed far enough to suppress that instinct, since they don't know how to properly suppress it, but they know they need to suppress the instinct, they faint? Is that real?
おそらく君吉夏美は同年代の子と比べて我慢強い性格だったのでしょうだから本来なら異常行動に出るような 激しいそれでも苦しい場合は意識を寸断することで行動に出ることを回避し続けていた。それが
Made sense, I guess. I don't know. I've never heard of it before, though. In other words, Natsumi wasn't isolated because she was bad at interacting with others. It was because she built a wall to block herself off so she wouldn't act on her explosive, implosive bursts of emotion towards others. All the while hiding the anger, sadness, and hatred she felt deep down for her unfair surroundings.
しかしそれがそのともいちゃんが分析を頼んでいた例の薬とどういう関係があるんですか？
君吉夏美はその抗興奮系の薬を服用することで普段から鬱積していた黒い感情、つまり母親をはじめとした周囲への憎悪を解消することができた。抜本的な問題解決にはとてもなっていませんが、少なくとも彼女の精神状態は証拠に落ち着いたのだから効用は確かにあったのでしょう。その結果、彼女はマイナス感情を弱めることで行動と思考が安定するようになり、常に爆発的な感情を抑え込もうとしていた緊張から解放されて本来の明るさを取り戻した。
Unfortunately, those dark emotions never completely disappeared, because those were also part of Natsumi Kimiyoshi's true feelings. In the normal adolescent children, their dark emotions, complete with their more rational light emotions, and they reconcile the differences through a form of compromise. But if she was taking medication that forcefully suppressed those dark emotions, she wouldn't know how to reconcile with her light emotions, and thus never knowing her limitations. Thus, if her dark emotions were awakened by some trigger and began to manifest, she wouldn't have the mental fortitude necessary to control them? Made sense. What? I mean, if the fainting thing's like a medical fact, sounds pretty sound to me. Though I guess you would be saying that the doctors misdiagnosed her fainting for anemia, which I guess could happen, but you know. I don't know. It sounds fine to me.
でも一つの過程としてはどうですか？
確かに筋は通っています。
Come on, Oishi, you fucking believed Rena's bioweapon thing. You're not gonna believe Atasaka on this? This is way more reasonable than that.
あとは当時君吉夏美が入院していた病院の関係者に聞き込みを行えば何か突破口が見つかるかもしれませんね。
彼女が入院していた理由は貧血症なのか、それとも
Well, it was for anemia, and she was misdiagnosed. That was the theory, right?
それが判明するだけでも状況は大きく変わってくると思います。
Or just find out if they, discovered that it was actually mental illness.
彼女が入院していた病院は分かっていますか？
それはまだ。
It's gonna be the fucking clinic.
しかしそうとなれば調べる価値は十分にあるでしょうな。
Maybe. Actually, I don't know. Maybe not. She didn't live in Hinamizawa, so.
いやいや、さすが赤坂さん、助かりましたよ。このまま私とコンビを組んで、私立探偵事務所でも立ち上げませんか。
That would be extremely based. Atasaka's losing his face in the organization anyways.
ですね。考えておきます。
Yo, see, I told you. It's not a joke.
冗談ですよ。警視庁の優秀な人材を食うのも困りそうな貧乏なにしまったら私は中央の人事のお偉方にぶん殴られちゃいますって。
大石さん。
それじゃ私は早速その線を当たってみます。何か分かったらお知らせしますので。では。
Oishi-san left the break room after saying that. I watched his back as he headed off, then sighed and looked up at the ceiling. For a while, I did nothing but vaguely think to myself. A private detective agency together with Oishi-san, huh? Yeah, that didn't actually sound like a bad idea. Whereas my current job was bogged down by overwhelmingly high pressure and constraints from above that were impossible to understand. The private detective industry was capable of dispensing justice all the time at a smaller scale. A lot smaller, but yeah. And it would allow me to delve deeper into the mysteries of Hinuizawa as a top priority. Wouldn't that be a better way to mourn the deaths of Rika-chan and Chief Inspector Munai? Just then... Red alert! Red alert! Who got beat up? What the fuck? Who? Chisato? Natsumi? Tomato? That's me? Huh? Saiki General Hospital? That's where I went the other day to ask about the medicine. And the victim was a high school student? For a moment, the face of Natsumi Kimiyoshi floated into my mind. Then... What's up, Fujita? This is Detective Fujita, running fast. He seemed to be in a bit of a panic, sweating and breathing hard like he was searching for something inside the police station. I boarded the car with Detective Fujita behind the wheel, and we headed to the crime scene at Saiki General Hospital. Unfortunately, Oishi had just left the station, so I contacted him on his pager and he was still waiting for a reply. What the heck? No! Not Chisato, man. Detective Fujita gave me an overview of the incident. The victim, Chisato Saiki, arrived at the hospital around 2 p.m. with her driver, Yamashina. She said she had plans to meet up with her father and intended to wait in the lobby until their scheduled meeting time. A few minutes later, the victim seemed to remember something and said, "I'm going out for a bit" to Yamashina, and then left the hospital alone. After their scheduled meeting time passed, Yamashina thought it was suspicious that she hadn't come back, even after her father arrived, so he searched the surrounding area. Then he found the victim bleeding from her head on the ground in the garden by the Psychic Care and Welfare Center? Yeah, that's where fucking Natsumi works. He immediately brought her to the hospital and called the police. Oh, she's not gonna say. Yeah, I bet she does know it's not to me, but she wouldn't say even if she did. Unless it was the surprise Tamako? This was her play all along? She was just acting as the best friend? The Tamako Gambit? Did this be a random attack, or did the attacker hold a grudge? And if so, why? Yep. Okay, they do have that information, so. Chisato! At least she's like fine. few police officers were standing in front of the hospital room where the victim, Chisato Saiki, was recovering. One of them was Detective Hanada.
ああ、お疲れ様です。赤坂警視。お疲れ様です。状況はさっきまで眠っていたようですが、少し前に学友が
Tomato? Probably.
話し込んでいます。
Listening carefully, I could hear a mix of sad and gentle voices coming from inside the hospital room. It was likely her friend came running over in concern and now shedding tears of relief while the victim tried to reassure her.
話は聞けそうですか？医師と父親の了解は得ておりますが、まだ精神的に安定しているとは言えない状況です。簡単にあまり刺激をしないようお願いします。わかりました。
I nodded to Detective Hanada, then knocked on the door of the hospital room. After a while, a firm voice called back, "Who is it?"
刑事の赤
Oh,
坂です。
firm voice, so maybe not. Who is it?
少々お時間よろしいでしょうか？
I could clearly hear some weary breathing from the other side of the door. The silence continued for a while, and the moment I began to fear I was being declined, a voice called back, "Come in."
失礼します。
Bro, first Tomoe, now they try to take out Chisato? Yeah, tomato. In the hospital room, I found a girl laying in the bed and a girl in a school uniform sitting on a chair next to her. I quietly pulled my police badge from my breast pocket and held it up to the two of them.
お体の具合の悪い中、誠に申し訳ありません。少しお聞きしたいことがあるのですが、ご協力いただけますでしょうか？
協力はしますが。
The victim, Chisato Saiki-san, lifted her upper body from the bed. She was wearing a gown and still looked in pain as she held her head. She looked to her friend and said, "It's fine," before turning back to me and speaking.
この通りの体ですから、あんまり長時間は勘弁してください。
Ooh, assertive.
大抵のことはすでに別の刑事さんにお答えしています。
ええ、理解しています。そちらに行ってもよろしいでしょうか？
はい。
I lightly bowed my head in appreciation, then moved beside the victim's bed, across from where her friend was sitting. Her friend glared at me with a distrusting expression on the verge of disgust, but in contrast, Chisato-san looked at me with a slightly gloomy expression.
時間もないので率直に伺います。あなたの親しくされているご友人についてです。
Of course, the moment I said that, Chisato-san turned her gaze downward and she started to bite her lip. I began to wonder if it would be alright to discuss this with our other friend sitting right there.
夏美の何を知りたいのですか？
Ooh. Chisato-san was still biting her lip, so the other girl responded on her behalf in a slightly trembling voice.
失礼ですが、あなたは
It's tomato?
私、牧村玉子と言います。ここの千里さんと同じく夏美、君吉夏美のクラスメートです。
そうですか。あなたも
夏美を疑っているんですか？もしそうなら見当違いです。あの子はこんなひどいことできる子じゃないですから。玉子、あんた
Ooh.
言わせて千里。
Not the demon eyes.
私聞いたの、アキラちゃんから。夏美がおかしくなったのは変な連中に
Yo!
てからだって。
It's Atasata! He actually started a good one, bro.
その時夏美すごく怯えて泣いてたって。それひょっとしてあなたたちの仲間ですか？
After saying that, the girl across from me, Tamato Makimura-san, glared at me with a look of hatred. Indeed, I couldn't help but remember how Natsumi-san looked, like she wanted to run away back at that incident.
あなたたちが来てからあの子は変わってしまった。今まで明るくて優しくてとっても可愛いいい子だったのに、あなたたちのせいで。一体あの子が何をしたって言うんですか。タマコ、それなのに私何も知らなくて、あの子のこと疑ってひどいことを。千里に気が利かないって言ってたくせに、私が一番あの子のことを分かってあげてなくて。そんな、謝りたい。何もできなくてごめんって、勝手に勘違いして嫌ったりしてごめんなさいって。私、夏美に謝りたい。
Actual Tomato redemption arc. Dude, I was a little cheesed when Tomato went off on Natsumi. It was the first Tomato L ever said, but I forgive her now, so now she's the perfect character once again. Rightfully and deserved.
そうでなきゃ。私。
Drip, drip. Tears began spilling down to the ground from Tomato-san's face. Facing the strength of her compassion for a friend, I couldn't say anything to defend myself.
おっしゃるように、君吉夏美さんに聞き込みを行ったのは、私その方法に行き過ぎがあったことも認めます。
It was mainly Oishi, to be fair. Atasato didn't stop him, so that was wrong, but Oishi kind of was like 80% of the problem there.
言葉だけではどうしようもありませんが、謝罪。
謝られたって。
It's too late.
今さら謝られたって。
Once you go Joker-fied, you can't go back.
やめなよ、タマコ。刑事さんたちだって事情があってのことなんだ。この人を責めるのは筋違いだし、むしろ。
Chisato-san tried to comfort Tomato-san, who was still crying, but then she grimaced as she seemed to remember something. When I saw that, I decided to follow up with a more difficult question. Oh.
君吉夏美さんの事情をどの程度ご存知ですか？
What the? CG me? Chisato looks so weird without her braids, man.
言いたくない気持ちはよくわかります。私だってこの件でたくさんの人に関わって多くの惨劇を目の当たりにしてきました。そのせいで自分が多くの人に不幸をもたらしているのではないかと疑って恐れ、中途で調査をやめるべきではないかと。ですが聞いてください、佐伯さん。あなたのご友人夏美さんはまだ生きています。死者はどうあっても帰ってこないが、生きている人ならまだ救うことができるはずなんです。違いますか？私が望むのは彼女の逮捕じゃない。それだけは信じてください。
Chisato-san's shoulders slightly twitched, and she tightened her grip on her blanket. Right. That's right. While delivering that answer, I thought back to what she said to me.
できれば救ってあげたいんです。あの子のこと、なんか他人のようには思えなくて。
Chief Inspector Manai was thinking of Natsumi Kimiyoshi until the very end. This case would likely come to nothing thanks to my incompetence, but even so, in that case I want to at least do all I can for the girl she wanted to save. It's the least I can do to atone, so she can rest a little easier.
夏美さんは今苦しんでいます。それでも懸命に悪夢に抵抗して強行を抑えようとしている。あなたを一度殴打して逃走したのがその証拠だ。違いますか？本当に悪夢に支配されていたらあなたを殺害するまで襲い続けたはずだ。なのにそこまでしなかった。だから私はまだ彼女を救える道は残っていると信じています。
刑事さん。
Chisato-san took a deep breath and opened her eyes, and Tamato-san looked away as she dripped out her chest. Right. Since I came here, I was already all but certain that Natsumi Kimiyoshi was the person who attacked Chisato Saiki-san. And after listening to the two of them in this room, I was absolutely convinced. They knew that she was the culprit. Nevertheless, they tried to hide it, to protect her. They felt incredible compassion for their friend, however.
佐伯さん、彼女は確かに今回の事件で逮捕されるでしょう。それに元の生活に戻るためには血の滲むような努力をしなければいけない。
I mean, probably shouldn't send her to a jail. Send her to a lab or something to cure her. No, regaining her old life is probably close to impossible by this point. After all the pain she's experienced, she's probably questioning whether it would be easier to take her own life.
しかし、これ以上の強行を犯せば、今度こそ本当に取り返しがつかなくなる。それを食い止められるのはあなただ。あなたしかいないんです。
With all my might, I held my breath to steel myself as I held her hand on the bed and looked into her eyes. Maybe this is all a useless struggle. But even so, all hope hasn't been lost. Otherwise, her feelings, Chief Inspector Minai's desire to save her, would be just too painful. As a result, I need to do everything in my power to prevent any further violence. And then...
もう一度だけお伺いします。あなたを襲った犯人、あなたはその顔を見ましたか？
Chisato-san breathed in and out many, many times with a slight quiver on her lips. It may not have lasted very long, but for me, the two friends of Natsumi Kimiyoshi sitting before me, the silence seemed to cause time to stop as the heavy air caused our bodies to freeze. The only thing I could hear was the faint cry of the Higurashi at dusk. Title drop right now? Good one.
私を後ろから殴っていたのは
Akira. And then, Chisato-san clenched Tamako-san's hand with both her hands, then spoke in a soft voice.
夏美が私の後ろから殴りかかってきたんです。
Oh. Ando? What that? Is this a different Ando? Isn't Ando the guy from Atosato's boss? Maybe not. Maybe I'm misremembering names. The siren of the police car flashed red and made a tumultuous racket.
命令了解。直ちに現場へと向かう。
With Detective Fujita at the wheel, the scenery blew past me out the passenger side window. Will we make it in time? Will we not? That was up to the will of the gods at this point. Hanyu, please offer up a ceremonial giant cream puff. However, the blood, sweat, and tears of many people brought us to this point. I wanted to finish this here. Truly, right here. With the siren blaring and the radio making a racket, Detective Fujita called out to me in a gentle tone that didn't match the surrounding atmosphere. And then... I love you. That? Thanks, bro.
中途半端な権限だから正しいことをしたくてもできない。だから私も偉くならないと、ね、そのために頑張って優秀ってことを認められて出世するんだって。藤田さん、俺赤坂さんに期待していますから。だって南井さん、赤坂さんのことずっと褒めていましたよ。頑張って腕磨いて、あなたみたいな優秀な人の部下として働けるようになりたい。あの人の気持ち忘れないであげてくださいね。ええ、もちろんです。忘れやしませんよ。決して。
You know, it's sad to think that in canon timeline, Hadasato... I mean, maybe he would meet Tomoe one day. Not because of this, though, just because Oishi and Tomoe are friends. So I guess it is possible for them to meet. Oops. My heart was racing with burning passion as I looked straight ahead at the passing scenery. Right. Just like Oishi, I can't afford to run away either. Yuki. Rika-chan, Chief Inspector Minai. I'm carrying the lives and dreams of many people. And Miyuki, even though I felt regrettable leaving her alone, Chief Inspector Minai encouraged me and said that she would understand one day. That's right, someday I want her to understand. That I throw myself into my detective work with firm convictions in my heart. You're gonna run this country. Seeing that reply, the look of determination on Detective Fujita's face eased into a smile as he nodded. And then... What's up, Madoka? Suddenly, I heard Madoka-san streaming through the radio. Based on the light on the radio, this wasn't a broadcast communication. She was communicating only to us. On top of that, the serious tone of her voice gave us reason to expect the worst. What the head? Oh, it's the grandmother's head. Yep. Granny. There's no need for Detective Fujita to say it. I felt the same thing. Oh no, this is when the family kills each other. Fucking floor it! Maybe we can still make it in time. No, we have to make it in time. I clenched both my fists as I passionately convinced myself of that. Oh boy, boys, it seems like we're getting close to the finale. The arc finale. That being said, we're gonna have to stop it here. Great episode. Great CG. Chisato down but not out. Let's see what happens. Surely Natsumi will just... I mean, even if they save her, isn't she still kind of fucked? I don't know, man. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on some more Higurashi Kageboushi. Until then, see ya.